All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Douglas Show. George Carmey's here, Cage from the Junkies is here, and my man Matt Disco is on the show today. Fellas, it's funny when I watched that intro video, which had just been done before the season starts, how many of those guys aren't either here anymore, won't be here anymore, and of course Ron in the background. So it just reminds you of how much change happens all the time. Exciting weekend of football. George, you were at the Ravens game. How was that?
It was fun. It was definitely a different perspective, being a diehard Commanders fan, growing up in Montgomery County, seeing that Raven rivalry my entire life. I didn't even know if I wanted to go to the game, but at the same time, free tickets. My friend had season tickets. It was a great opportunity. I was like, you know what? This is cool. I kind of want to see something for this city. I want to see something for our area, just kind of see what's going on. And just going to the game, it was cool. Just kind of see just a different perspective of things. I went to a pregame. It was called the Tailgoat. We had to pay $125 to get in there, but Shaq was a DJ. Shaquille O'Neal was a DJ for like about an hour and a half. Nice. Ed Reed was there, Ray Lewis. It's just so funny how just seeing the reverence of certain players that you wouldn't consider in DC. Like Jacoby Jones came out, Ray Rice came out, which is kind of funny, just kind of seeing all that. And it was cool. It's good energy. I realized I could never be a Ravens fan. It wasn't right for me. I felt uncomfortable there, but it was cool. It was good energy. And then the game was fun. I imagine Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, big game, big stage, just kind of seeing them both kind of show off a little bit. And it was fun. All together good game.
Yeah, if you get free tickets to an event like that, it's hard to pass up. And look, we know that Josh Harris and the ownership group, that they look north on 95 for guidance and a blueprint as to how to rebuild this Commanders franchise. I mean, there's no shame in looking at a great organization like the Ravens and trying to, pick and choose and lift certain things that they do if you like the way that they do business. And look, it's a model organization, and I think it's cool that you went and kind of like an outsider's view, like a commander's view
Absolutely.
of the Ravens to see kind of how they do things. And I think Josh Harris is doing, things on the same, on a different level, but same sort of fact-finding mission with the Ravens. He wants to build the Commanders kind of in the likeness of a franchise like that, like the Patriots. Like he wants this to be a world-class organization. You can tell.
And to that point, Doug and I coordinated. We knew we had you on the show on Monday. I thought about you because I went to the Horseshoe Casino right after the game. I was like, I know this is definitely a cake style. It's kind of cool being able to walk from the stadium to a casino. And Washington definitely has to take advantage of that because almost everybody did that. It was like a flooding from the stadium into the casino. Everyone's having a good time, waiting for the traffic to kind of peel off. And that's where I watched the Lions 49ers game. I was playing blackjack, having some drinks, and watching the game. It was a lot of fun. So
who knows what the new iteration of the stadium is going to be. Maybe there will be like a casino like built as the same development along with the stadium. We know that owners now at this phase in the NFL, they don't just want the stadium to be there for 10 or 12 games a year. They want it to be a year-round destination. They want to mix in retail, maybe casinos, hotels, make it almost its own like little mini city. So maybe, that could be in the works for the next Commander Stadium, wherever it might be.
Absolutely.
Now, George, are you opposing? Like, did you wear the jersey? Did you wear the Commanders jersey to the Ravens?
I thought about that, but I was like, dude, I'm walking into Baltimore. I grew up in the area. Like walking into Baltimore wearing the Commanders gear. I don't know if it's the best idea. I'm a Maryland grad, so I wore a Maryland hoodie. I walked in there. I was trying to stay neutral, just trying to stay lay low a little bit. That's pretty much what I did. I didn't roll hard going into Commanders gear. There was one person wearing Commanders gear there, so I give him credit. I bumped into some people, and they're like, how long have you been a Ravens fan for? I'm like, dude, I'm a Commanders fan, season ticket holder. And they were like, dude, I know you're a good fan. I'm not going to ride you that hard because if you're a season ticket holder of the Commanders, you guys been through some tough times. So they're giving me some credit there. But, the one thing I got to give the Ravens credit for, it was it was like 95% Ravens fans there, but maybe AFC Championship, Kansas City's across the country, so maybe there's some break there, but it was all purple there. There's a lot of Ravens fans there.
But George, that's like bad etiquette, man. You can't be that guy that walks into a stadium wearing a jersey of a team that's not even playing. Like I
hate that person.
I don't understand that at all. Like, if I go to Capital Arena for a Caps game, like I expect obviously Caps gear, and if say they're playing the Flyers, I expect a little bit of influx of Flyers gear. But there's always like that one attention seeker wearing like
a Blackhawks
Jets jersey. It's like, what are you doing? Well, like, it doesn't make any sense.
And stuff too. Exactly. With that one random fan, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't know.
So at the Houston, at the Texans Ravens game, the TV panned and caught a guy that had on a half Commanders jacket and a half Ravens jacket, and I said, "That's probably the lamest thing that I've ever seen." Dude, no, you can't wear that.
You can't. And you're not from the DMV. You don't really understand what's going on.
No, pick a side, bro.
Yep.
Disco, were there any big surprises for you out of the games this weekend?
I thought, to be honest with you, I'm just going to cut through the chase. I thought this was Baltimore's year. I absolutely thought that. Now, you can't count out the Chiefs as, Ric Flair. You got to, beat the man to beat a man. So the Ravens, I thought they played inexperienced. And we talk a lot about how the Ravens are a class organization, which they are. But I thought there were some key moments that you can't make those types of mistakes. So I was kind of surprised at the level of play and the inexperience. They seemed immature from the Ravens. That's what really stuck out to me yesterday.
Yeah, they didn't seem like they were rising to it. It looked like their first time there.
Yeah,
like the Chiefs, they were composed. Like Travis Kelce was doing the head games before the game even started by throwing Justin Tucker's helmet off the spot where Patrick Mahomes is warming up. But yeah, the Chiefs were composed. They looked like they'd been there 100 times, and they baited the Ravens into making kind of dumb, immature mistakes. The taunting by Zay Flowers. Is it for a guy who had as good a rookie campaign as Zay Flowers and who seems like a really good kid? I felt bad for him that he was going into the end zone, had the ball poked loose there. It's just a bad turn of events. Great defensive play by the Chiefs there, but it also shows you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes.
Absolutely.
And if you find the Chiefs catching points, just take those points and make the bet, and it's probably going to turn out pretty good for you.
Well, to your point, Cakes, you're right. The Chiefs have been there a million times, and it showed. And somebody mentioned this on Twitter, and I think it's right. You can tell opposing quarterbacks are looking over there at Mahomes, and it makes them feel rushed a little bit. And you can tell, like, they feel the pressure of looking at Mahomes on the other side. It's not supposed to be that way when you're facing a defense. And the other thing that you mentioned, Cakes, is they actually, as much as it felt like the Chiefs were crushing them, it's a Zay Flowers taunting penalty and a fumble, or they very well win this thing. I mean, and they didn't have any rhythm all day. I actually was quite surprised that it came down to that. Both games came down to brutal mistakes by the team that ended up losing this thing, because we can jump to the Lions game, George. It was the same thing there. They can say what they want to about going for it on fourth down, and we can discuss what it is that analytics actually is and means. But Reynolds doesn't drop two passes, and Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't drop the fourth down, and they're probably rolling that thing.
Yeah, I want you guys to educate me a little bit. So I was watching that game at the Horseshoe with a couple libations here or there, so I don't have the clearest vision that you guys may have had. But I saw that the Lions were up pretty big in the first half. It seemed like, potential Commanders coach Ben Johnson was moving the ball pretty effectively. And I was surprised they're punching the 49ers in the mouth. And then, I saw the 49ers had a breakout third quarter. I believe they had 170 yards in the third quarter and 107 yards all in the first half. So the 49ers turned it around. And it seemed like there were some controversial plays in the fourth quarter where basically the Lions could have potentially got back into the game. But, what's your perspective, guys? I guess, Disco, what do you think, man? What's your take from the game?
So, I mean, the Ben Johnson is the easy, is the low-hanging fruit, so I won't touch that.
Okay.
Again, I thought that the Lions really had an opportunity to win. Again, they showed their inexperience. I don't care what anybody says about, hey, You know, that's what he's been doing all seasons. It's called situational leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have drop balls, but here's the thing, guys. What really showed in both games is when you have elite players at position, when you have, like, when I say elite, I'm talking about top three. Like when you have a Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle or Travis Kelce, those are the difference makers. Not taking anything away from Zay Flowers or any of those other guys. But when you have elite players, the elite players are still playing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, we've
I thought to follow up on that. Yep. I just thought that the Lions got a little bit away from the run in the second half because, George, as you mentioned, they were shoving it on the Niners in the first half. They were doing what the Niners generally do to other teams, out physicaling the other teams. I kind of made up a word there, but you know what I mean. Like they were just imposing their will. Montgomery and Gibbs, I love that combination, and I felt like they got a little bit away from that in the second half. And trust me, I love throwing the ball, but if rushing the ball is effective like it was in the first half, like I felt like they could have come out in the third quarter and done more of the same. I think they got a little bit away from that. I think that might have been the beginning of the end for the Lions. I really thought they were going to put them away, but they left that door open for the Niners. Yeah. And as Disco mentioned, there's so many elite players. Didn't even mention Deebo Samuel. Like when he's healthy, he's just a huge difference maker. And I love what the Lions are building, but they're not quite there yet. They're not on that 49ers level.
Mm-hmm. And again, three wild drops and the crazy, what was it? The interception that wasn't off of the face mask to Ayuk was like, it's just so crazy how little things like that
you got to make those plays
seem so minuscule, but then when you start piling them together, it's one of these great comebacks. I am not usually a guy that worries about or roots for guys after they leave, but I don't know about you guys. I'm kind of excited for Trent to get to the big game and be able to rumble around a little bit with the big boys. I don't know if earned it's the right way, but he's certainly been the best at the position for a long time. Disco, you're right there, loaded with talent on that San Francisco team. Cakes, we've been talking about it a bunch on the podcast recently, what with Mike McDonald possibly coming in or Ben Johnson, and we talk about all the talent on these other teams. We've been wondering how much our talent could benefit just from the coaching bump.
Yeah, I mean, especially let's just use Ben Johnson as an example. Like, I think he's done a remarkable job with the talent that's been assembled there by Brad Holmes in Detroit, especially in the last 3 drafts. Like, just look at this most recent draft class there in Detroit, bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs, Laporta. Like, a lot of times coaches will look at rookies and just be like, you know what, I'm going to ease these guys in. I'm going to let them kind of learn at the hands of the guys who've been here. He just threw those guys into a system and said, you know what, I'm going to trust you guys. There's a reason we picked you guys so high. They moved back up in the first round to get Gibbs. I think he was like the 12th pick, if memory serves correct. Mm-hmm. But huge impact guys like Laporta, you could have spoon fed him a little bit. No, he was like, you're going to go into my system and you're going to produce. And each of those guys scored 10 touchdowns as rookies. So for me, that's really encouraging. Like if Johnson comes here, like what sort of bump is Terry McLaurin going to get? Is Jahan Dotson going to rebound from obviously his subpar second year? What sort of tight end, improvements are they going to make? Because that tight end room needs a youth infusion. It needs a talent infusion. So I think that's super exciting. And if a guy like McDonald comes over, like he'll have his hands full in improving a very leaky defense. And, he's getting talked up as like a mastermind. Valdez, who's one of our producers, really is selling us on like, this guy's a coaching superstar. Like whoever gets him is going to be really lucky. They're going to be really happy with the guy they get, with the schemes, with his communication with the players. So yeah, I think the picking the correct coach for the Commanders could do a world of good for the players that are here already, and also the players that Adam Peters is going to import through the draft and free agency.
Yeah, I had Lock and Four on a couple of weeks ago, and he said McDonald is one of those guys that you spend 5 minutes talking football with, and you totally sold on what's going on there. And I tweeted out earlier, I kind of think it's interesting the way the interviews are set up. I'm sure it's just random because they did it a while ago, but it's actually McDonald tonight and then Johnson tomorrow.
Right.
I think that they interviewed Weaver this morning, which should make them good on the Rooney Rule. Like I said, it's probably random, but I wonder if McDonald doesn't get in the room with these guys tonight and just blow them away.
And we're also hearing that, within the last couple hours, the Adam Schefter report where he's basically saying pump the brakes on Johnson to DC, and like there could be curveballs as far as Johnson coming here, Quinn possibly going to Seattle. I think if you get in the room with some of these guys, like you said, like they're going to blow you away, and you might, even if they had thought Johnson's our guy, now maybe Peters and that brain trust and the search committee are like, hold on, let's take our time with this. They don't have to pick a coach in the next day or two. It can take a week, 2 weeks to, make sure they've got the right guy. So
particularly if the Commander's job is the number one job, as many have said, then they can just kind of sit back and wait if others are going to wait on them.
To that end, yes. So Doug and I have kind of collaborated. We talk often about the coaches. Disco, I'm kind of curious what you think, and also Cakes. Who would be your number one candidate at the coaching position and why? So Disco, we'll start off with you. Do you think it would be McDonald, Johnson? Like, who do you want Washington to have potentially hire this week?
So to be honest with you, and this is not a cop-out, these guys are unproven as a head coach.
Okay.
I think that both have their I like what I see in both. Ben McDonald, to his credit, to Mike McDonald.
Yeah.
I think they shut out the Chiefs in the second half yesterday.
They did.
Ben Johnson, with some of the play calls and some of the things that he's done. I am not one of these guys married to whether offense or defense.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Because it's a leadership situation. Now, if you got a young quarterback coming in, then you might want to lean the offensive guy, but it really depends on your who your coordinators are. So I preferably I want them to hire somebody, really soon, so we can, kind of get the scouting started. But I think I've heard a lot of great things about both guys, but you know what? D'Amico Ryans is a defensive guy, and he's doing just fine. So I would be good with McDonald or Johnson.
Okay. Yeah. What about you?
I do have a little bit of bias towards offense. Maybe that's just fantasy football. It's jaded me for 20 plus years. Probably is. I would want Johnson for a bunch of reasons. One, people were sniffing around him last year, and Detroit was like, we're going to have to give him a pay bump to keep him here. We want to keep him in the fold. He's building something good here. The development of guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, the improvement of that offense. I mean, he's been there as the team has gone from 3 wins to 9 wins to 12 wins. I know that there were reports that Dan Campbell said, look, he's basically shadowing me around because he wants to see what being a head coach is like. Like, he doesn't want to just show up and get the job as head coach and then learn when he gets to Washington or to Seattle, wherever he winds up. So I feel like he's already kind of mentally prepared for this next step that he's going to take. And hopefully it's here with Washington. And I think after the Ron Rivera experiment, I think Josh Harris and his group, they want an exciting offense here in Washington. They know that you need to score points to compete in the NFL. Look at the teams in the Final Four, how many points that they average on offense. I know defense plays a role. If you're not scoring 25 plus points in the NFL in 2024, you're dead. You're just dead. And that goes hand in hand with finding the quarterback with the number 2 pick. I mean, it's like a 99.9% chance they put the quarterback there, finding the right guy and getting this offense where it needs to be. I know they tried to do it with Bieniemy. It didn't really work. I hope that at some point he gets a real opportunity for a head coaching gig. I just don't think it's going to be here. I think they're going to go the offensive side of the ball.
To your point, Cakes, I think you're also looking for a coach that's a teacher, because we have a lot of young guys on this roster. I mean, you got people writing off the 23 draft class already with Forbes and Quan Martin. And, you're not going to turn those guys. I mean, those guys are on rookie deals. You're not going to turn those guys over all those guys over like next season. So you got to have somebody to come in here and teach these guys. I'm hearing a lot of, well, we should have drafted Kyle Hamilton. I mean, if you drop Kyle Hamilton in this defense,
that's true,
would he be as good?
I agree.
But if you drop Quan Martin into the Baltimore defense,
absolutely,
I'm quite sure he would probably be better. So you really need to have a coach who's a teacher.
Good point.
Completely agree. And we talked about that a bunch too. It was odd when was it Mitch Tischler was on this Friday, right, George?
Yep.
And said that Percy Butler told him that when he got to town, they gave him 4 playbooks to learn. And it's like as a rookie, because they wanted the position flex for him to be able to play all 4 spots. And Disco, I'm with you for like, think about, you said Quan Martin put Cam Curl in that Kyle Hamilton slot and see what he looks like, or put Jamin Davis in the Patrick Queen strong safety spot and see what he looks like. I think it's again, that's what we talked about earlier in the podcast. I'm so interested to see just what the coaching bump by itself will do for a lot of these spots. Cakes are going to have to do something with the cornerback position. You talk about a defense that felt like 2 years ago it was what was going to lead this team. You look at the defense now, and it's brutal. You take Kendall Fuller off this team, and what do they have in the secondary? Like, take Cam Curl out, and you've got a bunch of second-year safeties. And I really thought that heading into this season, the secondary was going to be one of the bright spots of the team.
Yeah, and I mean, that's, as Disco mentioned, that's the first 2 picks in last year's draft for both secondary players. So you would expect the secondary to be improved, and it took a major step backwards. So I don't know if that's poor coaching. I don't know if those guys were just overdrafted. Hopefully that's remedied by Adam Peters now being in charge of the draft room instead of Ron Rivera, because as bad as Ron was as a coach, I think he was worse as a personnel guy. I mean, if you go up and down his picks, starting with Chase Young when he first got here, I mean, we haven't even touched on Chase Young, like loafing during the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown yesterday. Like, I just can't believe some of the tape that he's putting out there since now we saw it here in Washington. I thought that like he'd get his motor running full time out in San Fran. You didn't see that in yesterday's game. But getting back to the main point, I just think that with Peters and the new personnel group here, you're just going to see the draft picks are going to be elevated. Like, you're going to see across the board, you should see better players getting picked in every single round. Better free agents being signed. Like that has to be the case. Like if you're not seeing market improvement in the draft and free agency, after everything that Peters has done and all of his previous stops, then that's a huge swing and miss for Harris. So I'm guessing that has to improve dramatically going forward.
Well, and let's face it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Doug.
No, you're good, Disco. Go ahead.
So, and let's face it. I mean, when you've got a lame duck coach, and players see the handwriting on the wall.
I agree with that.
When you lose early, after the Bears game, I think that production might go down. But when you got a new regime coming in, now all of a sudden everybody's got energy. Everybody wants to compete for a job.
Exactly.
So I think it would be interesting to naturally see the play of some players go up a notch simply for the fact that there's a new regime and players want jobs.
And energy, because I think the vibe last year had definitely gotten booted out of there. They'll have to, whoever runs the offense, they'll be tasked with getting more points. Cakes, you mentioned earlier. You don't know how it's possible. They scored 1 more point this year than they did the year before, and I was told that Scott Turner was the worst offensive coordinator on the planet, and that EB was going to make things so much better. And frankly, I thought that he would. And I don't know what went wrong, whether it was him trying to force a system that really didn't work to the players they had. But I think in general, that's the odd thing about the Ron Rivera whole legacy, is that they should have had the players that worked for the system. It was his system. And
I think part of what really hamstrung Bieniemy was Ron's final life preserver was Sam Howell developing into a starting quarterback. Yeah. So instead of focusing on the team and winning games, it was more about can we make Sam into a guy who can start in the NFL? And they waited too long, in my opinion. Now this is revisionist history, but they waited too long to turn to Jacoby Brissett. Like if they saw Sam struggling, they should have just said, look, we can still salvage the season. We can go to Brissett, see if it works. Because in the limited sample size we saw in Brissett in Bieniemy's offense, it looked like it was clicking and it was working. And the ball was getting pushed downfield and Terry was getting more involved. And it looked better. Like I feel like that was like the real final straw for Ron, was that they really focused on, well, let's get Sam, ready to be an NFL starter, instead of, well, let's try to win a bunch of games or enough games to try to keep us alive and try to get to my 5th year. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, or I'm just making up, you know what I mean? But that's kind of
but at the same time, like winning with Brissett was never going to get him the job saved. You know what I mean? Like, I totally get why that's also why he knew, like, if they could get up there and slap that home run with Sam Howell, maybe, and I don't think anybody was giving them a job anyway. I think that was a good point. But I do think that was the only way, getting out there and winning 8 or 9 games with Jacoby Brissett. Now maybe it affected who got traded at the trade deadline, but I don't think it was going to keep anybody's job in the long run, George.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to ask Cakes a question. So I know you guys have your show, obviously. Have you ever had Rivera on recently? I haven't kept up to like any major interviews. I was kind of wondering, like, with your interaction, I guess you haven't. Okay, because my question was,
we had him on. We had a deal with him. I think it was 2 years ago where he came on weekly, and he was a good guest. I mean, he wasn't the most forthcoming. I mean, what NFL head coaches are, those guys keep things close to the vest. But yeah, once he was no longer contractually obligated to come on weekly, we didn't have Ron on.
Yeah, I was wondering if, like, just through like your interactions, or if you talk, like, I just wonder how much energy and how much motivation Ron Rivera had moving forward. Like, even if he wanted to have a 5th year, it just seemed like he was worn out over time. Like, you seem like you're shaking your head. What are your thoughts?
I didn't think. My personal theory is that once the sale of the team went through, Ron knew he was gone. I personally don't feel that Ron had any. Ron, as Cake said, Ron's last hurrah was, because remember the ring comment that he made. Give me my ring if they win. If Ron was interested in Sam Howell. I think Ron knew that he was gone, unless I don't feel he coached with the same energy. I think Ron knew, he saw his fate once this, because he's been through it in Carolina. So I don't think Ron it wasn't about winning games. It was about Sam Howell.
Like legacy. I can see that.
George, what's the chance if they go McDonald, they'll be more apt to trade out of the number 2 spot?
I don't think so.
Build through the trenches.
Yeah, I kind of see what Marcus has mentioned. We have a comment in the chat. Marcus Eldon said, "Hey fellas, just because we're drafting a number 2 doesn't mean we're going to take a pick at number 2. Maybe we'll trade back." I just think it's too good of an opportunity. I think this is just it's an ushering of a new era with a new coach, with a new GM. We have to admit it, guys, there is like a PR, a marketing aspect to the whole brand as well. So I do think they want to come in with a quarterback and have a new vision. And I think it's the smartest thing to do. I think it is important to pick somebody and have that coach have that, the autonomy, his hands on them, and build up a quarterback from ground up. I hope our fan base can give both, the offensive coordinator and, head coach, offensive coordinator, and the quarterback a long leash to kind of develop. Logan Paulson said it great. I heard him on his podcast with Craig Hoffman talking about how Adam Peters worked wonders in San Francisco because he had a great relationship with Kyle Shanahan. They sat down next to each other. They talked about basically what the roster should look like, how it should be developed, and hand in hand, they've kind of handpicked players that suited Kyle Shanahan's system. And I'm sure you guys saw that great clip. It was Sean McVay. I forget the GM of the Rams now, but they were sitting down next to each other. Less seed, right? And they're talking about like the BYU product, talking about Pakua, and basically it was like, talking about, hey, and it was like, hey, that guy, I want him. He's going to fit. He's the guy I'm looking for. And it was a great Sean McVay knowing what he wants and plucking the player. And I want to see that in DC. So,
yeah, that's what it should. Yeah. There should be like, it shouldn't be just Adam Peters, dictator. What I say goes. I'm not like. we saw his press conference. Like, he seems very inclusive. He's going to want to hear different input from different important people in the organization. And that's like you mentioned, like, that's the way it should be. Like, whoever the head coach winds up being, like, he should be sitting right next to Peters, going through the roster, telling him exactly the players that he wants, the players that he kind of covets, and they need to be on the same page as far as who's drafted, who they're spending the free agent dollars on. Yeah, I agree with that, but it can no longer, like, thank God it's no longer going to be the coach-centric approach.
I agree.
It can't be the Ron Rivera approach. Like, that just, it doesn't work in the modern day NFL. We've seen Belichick, like, lay waste to the Patriots roster over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Like, how's that worked out for Belichick? Like, he's jobless this upcoming season. Okay, like, that's it's not working anymore. Like, you need to have that strong GM as well as input from the head coach, the offensive, defensive coordinators, your position coaches. Like, they should all have a voice, but in the end, it's going to come down to Peters, and then Peters clearing it through Josh Harris to make the most important picks, including most likely a quarterback at number 2.
Doug always talks about, we all, constantly on here together. He talks about conflicting interests between the GM and the coach. Over time, there's going to be a fork in the road where the coach kind of wants something and the GM wants something. And, the coach might be on the way out while the GM's looking for long-term future. Right. There's going to be some conflict there. So I agree. I think the coach-centric model should be shelved, and it should be more of a, hierarchy, a delegation kind of working together as opposed to someone just kind of making the calls.
What I'm looking forward to is the process. So, because we none of us really know what Adam Peters' philosophy is in terms of team building. Now, he said he'll build through the draft, but he's going to do something. I mean, everybody assumes that, people have their mock drafts, but we don't know. I mean, not, as you mentioned, 99% chance that they draft a quarterback, but will it be at 2? Do they see a guy where, maybe we can get 2 for 1? Maybe we drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and we like a second tier guy. Which, I mean, again, this isn't sexy, but maybe we like a guy, we get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2, or we get somebody else at 2. And then there another guy that the coach likes, it said, and then you can do, so we don't really know. So
I know the fan base will revolt at they'll come to my house with pitchforks and torches with this idea. But look, the roster as it is, and it's going to go through a radical transformation under Peters. I don't think this is a team that's obviously going to be in playoff contention next year. I don't think we have a CJ Stroud, Houston Texans situation on our hands. I could be wrong, depending on who they draft and how things shake out, but maybe Peters, like, he's obviously a long-term visionary, not just this upcoming season or the next season. He's looking down the road. Maybe he looks at this class outside of Caleb and says, you know what? I don't love Drake May. I don't love Jaden Daniels. I don't love Michael Penix, but I do love, as Disco mentioned, I love Marvin Harrison. I mean, that's if Marvin Harrison's the next Randy Moss, like, I might have to take him at number 2. So maybe he is looking at this he is looking at long-term. He says, I'm going to grab the next Randy Moss at number 2. And if I don't like any of the quarterbacks, I'll either go into the free agent market or I'll draft a quarterback in 2025, because I'm building this thing to be good for the next 8-10 years, not just for 1 year.
Like the 49ers. Yep.
Exactly. So maybe, I don't think this is going to happen, but maybe he says, you know what? There's not a quarterback I love at 2.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to waste that high of a pick on a guy that's not worthy of it.
Or look at the Lions line. I mean, they got 3 first-rounders and 2 third-rounders on that thing. So maybe Ben Johnson says, I like the kid from Notre Dame, and let's get some offensive linemen in here. And to your point, maybe the quarterbacks will revisit next year. I think at 2, they probably go quarterback, but it would not surprise me, because there are a lot of holes. Who's playing DN next year?
Exactly. Cakes to that end. So we know there's going to be a big, roster overhaul. Jonathan Allen, man, we know he was on your show recently. He talked about, I do see a vision outside of being on the Commanders. What was your impression? What was your takeaway from that interview? Do you think he is going to be moved next year? Like, what's your thoughts on him so far?
I just think that he's just tired of the losing. I mean, this is a guy who obviously won a ton in high school, won won it all at Alabama. I mean, I don't know how many games he lost while he was in Tuscaloosa. It wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
So the losing since he's been here has to be wearing on him. But I would guess that he's liking what he's seeing so far from the offseason by bringing in Peters, whoever the head coach is going to be. So I think he's certainly amenable to staying here. But on the other side of it, it's a business. And if Peters is talking to other teams and other teams are interested in acquiring an all-pro, a Pro Bowl level defensive tackle, and he gets a good deal for him, I think Adam Peters wouldn't hesitate to deal a guy like Jonathan Allen. So I think he wants to stay here. I think if he had, like the best case scenario play out, he'd play his entire career here. But I think Adam Peters is shrewd. And if he knows that somebody's going to give him a 3rd round pick for Jonathan Allen or something along those lines, he's at least going to consider making moves like that to shake up the roster.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they've got like $75 million tied up in 2 defensive tackles. You just can't do it. That was Ron Rivera type decisions. And I'm sure Peters can't wait to figure out a way that he could better distribute the money. Are there any of these guys, Disco, that are up for that would be free agents? You're talking about
Samuel, Gibson.
Yeah, the Samuels of the
Curl.
world, the Gibsons of the world. I think Fuller's up for a contract. Cam Curl is up for a contract. Any of these guys you bringing back?
I'd really consider bringing back Curtis Samuel.
I like Curtis
he's a
Samuel.
guy that he's like a poor man's Debo, but I mean, he can what the enemy was able to do with him. I really like what I saw, and plus he's young enough. I'm very curious, and I don't know, but I'm very curious of what they would think about Antonio Gibson, and how he could be used. Cam Curl. I definitely try to bring back, but these, when you're in a rebuild, you're not going to pay a whole bunch of guys. You're going to try to go find that rookie guy, but you have to still balance out your team. So I would love to bring back Curtis Samuel, and I might kick the tires on Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, I can't speak objectively about Antonio Gibson. I'm just a big Gibby truther. I know he hates
your fantasy teams
from day one. I can't look at him objectively. Like I just feel like I just look at him like through a different lens than most people that watch NFL football. Like I feel like I see a different player that is constantly underutilized by the offensive staff. I can't speak correctly, like about him. The one guy that I feel is almost like a trap, who you mentioned, is Cam Curl. Like, is Cam Curl as good as he gets hyped up to be, or is Cam Curl just pretty good for the Commanders level of players that we've had over the past?
He's a hot button guy that the fan base.
I don't know.
He is a hot button guy. We talk about it all the time in our chat. I think we're crunching some numbers, and Kicks, I'll throw it back in a second. We're crunching some numbers. It's looking like $13-14 million to sign him potentially. It's in the safety market. Is he worth that kind of money to you? Like, what do you think about that?
Wow. I'm going to guess Adam Peters is going to look at that number and he's going to see some sticker shock and say,
yeah.
You know what? So, he's going to say to Cam Curl, we like you. We don't like you that much. Good luck to you out on the open market, sir. We hope you land a big bag.
I think as fans, I get it. We get attached. Yeah. But you've got a whole new regime coming in.
I agree.
We've got guys that we love and we like, and with better coaching, they would be this. They could totally not be in the vision of the new ownership. And we need to be prepared that if Cam Curl goes somewhere, he might ball out. And then we're like, oh, we had him in the building and we didn't say. That's going to happen with some guys on this team.
Of course. I agree.
And, it's funny with Gibson. I'm with you, Cakes. I've been a fan ever since he got here, and I'm always disappointed every year when EB was hired. I was like, finally, we're going to get to see what we've all expected.
He's going to unlock him.
And no, it wasn't. He was a third down blocking back. Yeah, I was just like, It was very frustrating. He reminds me a bit of when Portis got here to Washington, and then Coach run him up the middle of every single play. It feels like if somebody would get in the building and tell Gibson to lose 10 pounds and get back to that, he's up to like 245 now. I think get back to like the 225 that he entered the league in. I think maybe you'd see a little bit of that the diva that everybody kind of thought he was going to be there. And Disco, I think you're right too that we don't talk about. I see on Twitter all the time people saying, "Oh, well, they definitely bringing back this guy," and "Oh, they definitely got to bring back this guy," and it's like, well, we don't even know who that coach is.
Yeah,
like, how do you know at all what they want the roster to look like? We're just so used to what the roster is supposed to look like that we're just guessing from prior bad deeds. And I think that until we can at least figure out, who the head coach is, and with that, then like if it's McDonald, then you still don't know what kind of offense they're going to run.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that would be nice if we could get the head coach in, so they go start putting their staffs together. It's one thing for Ben Johnson because he'll run the offense, but particularly with McDonald, like I want to know what the offense is going to look like. Who's going to run the offense?
Right.
I mean,
if McDonald is the guy, then look, let's just have a young coach all-star lineup. Bring in a strong young offensive mind to pair with the defensive mastermind. And
and
that's what they do. Coaches, man. I need coaches that are younger than me. Okay. I'm 53. I'm 53. That's the cutoff. You gotta be a few years younger than me at best. Like Dan Quinn, even though I know that he's a good candidate, not that interested in Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn doesn't do much for me. Even though JP Finley mentioned he's a leader of men, best candidate out there. Somebody in the personnel department told him that anonymously a few weeks ago. Whatever.
I'll take him as a defensive coordinator. I wouldn't take him as a head coach. I think
doesn't the pendulum swing though? Because okay, we want the young hot guy. If he doesn't work out, then we're gonna go get Dick Vermeil. You know what I mean?
That's how.
That's the way it always seems to work. Now we're squarely in young up and coming coordinator mode. I think for the next head coach.
I want Disco nailed it though. I think the way like you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you can't convey your message and that you're a poor communicator, you're a poor leader. So I think we need a smart coach that can teach these players because they're young students. They need to be educated the right way. They go out in the field and not be confused. Like, how many times have we seen the defense like miss an assignment, just blow up and give a big 80-yard touchdown and it's kind of ruin the whole game. So
going back to what Doug said earlier, how about you don't overwhelm your rookies with four
playbooks? Yeah, exactly.
How about, or ask Sam how to throw it 5,000 times.
Let's find a lead player. Position flex and throw it out the window. Like
absolutely.
You know what I like? I like guys to be good at one thing.
Position.
You know what?
Exactly.
You know who doesn't have a lot of position flex? Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay. Lamar Jackson.
Commanders fans will hear position flex 10 years from now and have mental breakdowns.
So again, going back to the earlier point, like, guys, we love, like, is Brian Robinson, is he the foregone conclusion as the one back? I mean, you look at San Francisco, they've got McCaffrey. I mean, there's only one of McCaffrey. I mean, you look at like a Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, you've got home run backs. So is it a foregone conclusion that Brian Robinson is running back one? We don't know.
I agree with that. But
he's a piece, but
I agree.
I have a hard time spending first round draft capital on a running back, even though like Gibbs looks like a
standout.
Mm-hmm. So that one looks like it's hitting. Obviously McCaffrey, but are the Giants happy they spent the number 2 pick on Saquon Barkley?
No,
probably
Cowboys
not.
On Zeke. Same thing. We were reactive, by the way. Being reflective.
Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. I don't know. It's still jury's still out on him.
Now he should be wheels up in next year with Arthur Smith gone. You would think. But we'll see what sort of offense Raheem Morris is going to run down there. He should have a better year.
To answer your question, Disco, I think, just like Cake said, I think Robinson's a piece. Like, let's say we get Ben Johnson, everything works out, which I really hope we do. I can see him playing like the David Montgomery role, like that kind of the hammer, the sledgehammer, the power back in regard to that. I think we need to complement like a scat back, kind of third down back like Jahmyr Gibbs. I like Gibson. I want to have the benefit of the doubt for him, but I think that the relationship's kind of run its course. I think he would probably be served at a different team's kind of new, fresh perspective. I think it's not always smart to pay a running back. We can always get one in the draft as well. We need a burner, man. Like I love Devon A-Chain from
find the next him.
Plug him in. Miami. He was awesome. I loved him. Imagine him as one of our scat backs right there. It's a fresh legs, healthy rookie contract. That's what I'm looking for. I hope let's say Ben Johnson comes in, hammer Brian Robinson. Let me draft a running back that could catch it in the backfield that fits my system. Let's do it. That's what I want to see.
And I think the one thing we can all be excited about is that it sounds like whoever is in charge of coaching the football team will sit down with Peters and they'll talk collectively about what you need to make your football team operate. And the one thing that excites me about Peters is you look at that San Francisco, like no matter when they lost guys for San Francisco, like that team is deep. They just had guys pop up and play. And again, hard to know whether that's the guys picking the players or the guy coaching them up, because that coaching staff they have out in San Francisco is one of the better ones in the league. But again, that also means that Peter's been around good coaching. So you'd think that he'd know when to see it going all the way for Peters going all the way back to New England. Cakes, you guys are doing something cool on Friday. At the where is it again? You were telling me before the show started.
We're doing a live event. It's 106.7 The Fan versus Team 980 live. It's Friday, February 2nd at Bethesda Theater. You can go to BethesdaTheater.com to get your tickets. Jonathan Allen is going to be a special guest. He'll be up with us on stage. We'll be talking about the future of the Commanders. Hopefully there's a head coach hired by Friday, and we can talk about that with him. We'll just be talking about the Super Bowl, about, doing a bunch of behind the scenes stuff for people that, uncensored stuff that we can't do on the radio. So it should be a good time, for all the hosts on our station on the Fan and the team.
How long is it? What time is it again, Cakes?
Starts at 8 p.m. Friday night.
What goes on? Do you guys still do your morning show? What everybody still does their gig during the day, and then y'all will do it again at night?
And it's going to be more. It's not going to be like radio show format. It's just going to be probably some Q&As. Have Jonathan Allen up on stage, talk about the Super Bowl, talk about the future of the Commanders. It should be just casual, fun, hang out with all of the personalities from the Fan and from the Team 980 AM. We'll all be under the same roof, hanging out together.
And it's a great venue. It's a great venue too.
It is a good venue. We'll have some libations, so it'll be a good time for everybody Friday night. So
sounds a great time.
Anybody out there that would love to come, BethesdaTheater.com is where you can get your tickets.
That's awesome. Before we run out of here, Disco and Cakes, we won't see you again before the Super Bowl. Who do you like? Disco, let's start with you.
Man, I can't count out the Mahomes. I mean, I can't count out
Mahomes.
Beat the man, you got to beat the man. So I think Kansas, until I see Kansas City lose, then, hey, I Kansas City.
I'm with you, man. I'm going with the Fighting Taylor Swifts, especially if they're catching points. I've got to take Mahomes catching points.
It makes sense.
I'm a quarterback snob, man. I'm sorry. If you're going to ask me to pick between Mahomes and Brock Purdy, I'm always going to pick the team that's led by Patrick Mahomes. It's done it before. I was thinking this, before the show today, if I'm Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and other guys in the AFC, when my deals are up with my current teams, I'm going to give a serious look. And this is not doing a bit serious look to come to the NFC.
Absolutely.
Because as long as Mahomes is playing at the level where he's playing, and let's be honest, this was not the best Chiefs offense. This is a team that really got a boost from their defense, and Travis Kelce caught fire in the playoffs. That offense was not the Chiefs offense of old, and they're still in the Super Bowl. Those guys are in their prime at the wrong time, because they're in the same prime as Patrick Mahomes, who's 1 year older than both Allen and Lamar. If I'm those dudes, when my deals are up in Buffalo and Baltimore, I know this is sacrilegious because those cities love those guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to seriously consider jumping conferences, because it's just going to be an easier path to get to the Super Bowl and win titles if I'm not butting heads with Patrick Mahomes every single year in the playoffs.
And CJ Stroud coming up now too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just a murderer's row of quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's rough. Real. George, you and I will be on tomorrow with Nick Ackridge and Mark Bullock. The film breakdown will move on to Drake May. So excited to see what the fellas think about Drake May, potential number 2 pick. Disco, always good to have you on the show, buddy. And Coach, we always appreciate you.
A lot of fun, guys. Appreciate it.
Look on Friday.
All right.
Thanks, fellas.